I don't think I've ever seen so much information about a mass shooter come out as fast as we've seen with this latest terrible, tragic shooting. I mean, within hours, we're told he was trans, Russian, anti-Israel, and anti-Trump. We see messages that have been written all over his weapons. I mean, we get these videos of the weapons and him showing them off. We get his journal. This is the manifesto. We get all of these many pages of a manifesto. When have we ever seen so much information come out so fast in a mass shooting? Doesn't this just seem a little bit too convenient? Right? I mean, look, I don't want to be the big conspiracy theorist here, but I think we have to be a conspiracy theorist about this, or it's not even a theory when it's an actual conspiracy. Let me play for you this video. And this is what I'm talking about. This is where I think all of this is leading, why they're showing us this person, and he just happens to have all the traits that the neocons hate, right? He's anti-Israel. He's Russian, kind of connected to Russia somehow, which we'll get into that because he's not actually, but he somehow knows how to write in Russian. He knows how to write in Cyrillic. He at 23 years old, who's not Russian. He is anti-Trump, all these things. But this is where I think this is leading. Watch, this is Aaron Cohen. He's a former Israeli special ops vet, and he is on Fox News, and this is what he's saying.
Correct. I am now about to launch Gideon, America's first ever AI threat detection platform built specifically for law enforcement. It scrapes the internet 24/7 using an Israeli-grade ontology to pull specific threat language and then routes it to local law enforcement. It's a 24/7 detective. It never sleeps, and it's going to get us in front of these attacks.
Would it have picked up on this, do you think?
100%. I wish my program would already be up. We're not launching until next week. I've got a dozen agencies on board, Trace. I just unloaded a major Northeast agency with over 2,700 sworn. This is America's early warning system.
It's America's early warning system, says the former Israeli special ops guy, Aaron Cohen, saying that he's unleashing a surveillance on us that'll detect these things before they happen. So this will flag you if you happen to say certain things. And this guy just so happens, now they're going to release this tech right when it just so happens that this mass shooter has all the things that the Republican neocon establishment hates, right? He's trans. So now we're going to flag all the trans people. So anybody who might be trans is going to get flagged. And, anybody who's anti-Israel, that's going to be top of the list, especially some of the things that this guy said, on the writings on the guns and in his manifesto, which we'll go over here in a minute. But they're going to go after anybody who says anything anti-Israel. They're going to be flagging you. They're going to be flagging us. They're flagging all of us. Anti-Israel sentiment, anti-Trump sentiment is going to get flagged. He's like loving Russia, learning Cyrillic, not even Russian. That's going to get flagged, right? Oh, you must be, because, the neocons, even though Trump says he wants to end the war and reestablish relationships with Russia. I mean, the rest of the neocons, they're all about just keeping that war going. So all of these things are going to get flagged by Gideon, and that's not the only spyware that's going to be out there. They're actually unleashing several on us, and there's others that are already out there circulating around that are meant to flag us like Minority Report style. Let's go over the fact that this video was released. Again, when have you ever seen this much footage or this much information coming out about it from a shooter? Some of the things that were written on these weapons: burn Israel, Israel must fall, 6 million wasn't enough, destroy HIAS, which is a Jewish refugee aid organization, Jew gas, he has it written on some of these. He's got kill Donald Trump on there, kill Trump now. He has nuke India. I don't know. He's got McVeigh on there. Things like for the children. I mean, a lot of stuff that was just written all over the weapons. And now in the manifesto, so they're going to be flagging. They're going to flag any phrase that they think. I'm sure there was Free Palestine on one of them. You see, did I actually see any sort of? I think in the manifesto, he kind of says something like that. But of course, they're going to be flagging any and all of this. Now, let's talk about this manifesto. When have you seen a manifesto come out so quickly? One thing that's really odd about this manifesto is it's written in Cyrillic. Robin or Robert Westman, whatever you want to call him, he was not Russian, 23 years old, and somehow was able to write this many pages in Russian to where it's translatable and it makes sense. And he even says in the manifesto, I don't really know Russian, I'm just kind of, as he's writing in Russian, and he's like, I don't really know it. So this is some of the stuff this has been translated. This was ran through AI for translation, ran it through multiple AI to ensure that it was translated correctly, and AI all said it was translated correctly. So translatable Russian at 23 years old. I don't know. That's really strange to me. I don't know very many 23-year-olds who can write fluently in any language, even unless it's I actually don't know very many 23-year-olds who can write fluently even in their second language. If they have a second language at home, they often cannot write in it. They can talk in it. They understand, but they can't write in the language. So, and especially a language that doesn't use the, our same alphabet, but uses a completely different alphabet. That's just bizarre and strange to me. I'm just going to say it's just strange to me. So some of the manifesto, I'm going to read a little bit of it, of the translation. It's awful, but I think it's good for us to understand what they're putting out there, because they've put this out there for a reason. Manifestation of thoughts. He says, I've had thoughts of mass murder for a long time. I'm very conflicted with writing this journal. I need to get my thoughts out without getting put on a watch list. He says. So he says, at times in the manifesto, he talks about having gone to, he's like, I don't want to go to a therapist. If I go to a therapist and talk to anybody about this, they're going to flag me. They're going to call the FBI. They're going to put me on a watch list. Meanwhile, what we know is he was trans, right? And actually was able to legally change his gender with his mother's help. And so in order to do that, I believe you have to get treatment. And I think if you're trans, you're getting treatment, right? So part of that is going to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. Part of the process is doing that. So he clearly did go to mental health counseling. You can't be trans without it. So what's that about, right? So here's a person that went through all of that, and this was never brought up in the sessions, nothing like that. I mean, just really, really bizarre. It says, as of lately, I've really let myself go, indulging in every mass shooting video I can find. My interest in specifically school shootings started, I think, in the 7th grade, he says. He also says, I think that committing a mass shooting is not the right thing to do. I cannot let myself do anything like that, but G-effing-D, I'm going to try to censor it a little bit. It feels so good to indulge in the thoughts. I have so many reasons why I cannot do it. I can't do it to my family. I love them and they love me. I simply can't do it to them. He also says, funny story, it would probably be unsettling and suspicious if FBI or someone saw my YouTube history, but I don't think it's weird enough for law enforcement to step in. So, that Gideon's going to be scouring our YouTube history now. It says, I'm writing in Cyrillic text, but English in phonetics. I also sprinkle some Russian words, I think. Terrible grammar and spelling. So I don't actually know what language. I guess he's writing in Cyrillic. I thought it was Russian. I know Russian uses Cyrillic text, but he's saying he's not writing in Russian. But so I don't know. But he says, I've been learning Russian for many years, but I never really learned. I also think I might already suffer that I could write in Cyrillic very inconsistently. But hey, it works for me, LOL. No, he wrote it. He wrote this manifesto just fine. We're able to translate it and understand it. He says, I think the reason I've let myself go lately is my fear of health complications. I've been smoking and vaping. So they're going to be now going after the smoking and the vaping. It's like anything that Republicans, they could just bake anything. If they could just make the perfect shooter to just target all the things that various different factions of the neocon right, what they want to target, then they just kind of baked it all into this one person. And they're like, yeah, and he vapes all the time too. So we got to stop those vapors, and we got to stop the trans, and we got to stop the anti-Trumpers, and we got to stop the Russians, and we got to stop the anti-Semites, right? I mean, it's just too perfect. He goes on to talk about, he fantasizes about Sandy Hook. He fantasizes about Boulder, or is it Aurora? What was the first? Columbine? Fantasizes about all of these various different shootings, saying that he prefers to shoot kids because they're helpless, and he thinks that would be great, which is just awful to think about. He also says, I have a loving family and a good support system of people that want to see me thrive. for some reason, the fact that I have a pretty good life and the fact that I want to kill people have never correlated to me. I simply do not really care about my life, only caring about the impact on other people. All the more reason for them to spy on us, right? They're going to be like, wow, this guy had no criminal history. There were no, nothing to flag him in that way. So they're just going to instead use it as an excuse to flag all of us, because here's somebody with no criminal record and he went and did this. And now they're going to be unleashing this spyware on all of us. And they're going to say, it doesn't matter. You could have come from a good family. He came from a good family. So we have to spy on all of you. I mean, don't you understand? We can't profile or think, well, there might be just all of you. And if you've made any statements, if you are confused about your gender, if you're anti-Israel, if you praise Russia in any way, I mean, all of these things. And if you vape, you're going to be potentially flagged. He says, with regard, now this is where it's like, baked perfectly into this 23-year-old Cyrillic text journal. I just find that so odd. And the fact that it was released, it's almost like, did he really write this? Okay. Says, with regards to my motivations behind the attack, I can't really put my finger on a specific purpose. It definitely wouldn't be for racism or white supremacy. Those fools seem to always get clowned and jailed. I don't really like blaming groups of people of color. I don't give enough of a shit about them to take my life over them. If I did carry out, so he says right there, like, right, I don't have any racial motivation. I'm not a white nationalist, right? People on the right are often accused of being white nationalists. He says, no, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not going to target any group of people. But he says, if I did carry out something rash, motivations would most likely be against filthy Zionist Jews. That's what he says. And then he goes on to use some slurs about them. Yes, and he says, Free Palestine in the journal. There you go. So, anybody else suspicious about this? This just seems a little bit too perfect for those who are trying to go out there and censor us and silence us and just go any and all the groups that they think are just dangerous individuals, right? They're saying trans, dangerous individuals. Certainly there has been an absolute insanity in our society when it comes to the gender identity, gender fluidity, parents being told that they have to affirm their child's identity, when they're 14 years old and saying things like, I think I'm a boy or I think I'm a girl or whatever. We've just gone way too far and it's insane. But prior to this, trans people have existed for a long time and we haven't had, before this kind of push on the kids to be trans, we haven't seen, people weren't paying any attention to trans. And now suddenly there's a lot of attention being paid. There's been a disproportionate number of mass shootings done by trans, and that's being pointed out right now. And obviously, anybody who's trans, my big suspicion is they're on medication. And I think when you put any kid on any sort of psychosomatic drug, what do you think is going to happen to their brain? People are sticking their kids. They've got developing brains, and they're putting their kids on all kinds of, medications to change their brains because my kid's too hyper. My kid can't focus. My kid's depressed, right? And then they stick these kids on all of these drugs and they think that there's not going to be any sort of consequence to that. I think there's probably a consequence to that. And I think that's probably the most logical thing to be looking at first and foremost is what kind of drugs are you pumping into your child? And what do you think that's going to do to their developing brain? Because it makes sense to any rational thinking person for just 2 seconds that if you pump them full of drugs, it's probably not going to be positive. Not when they're still developing. But yeah, we do it. Society says it's okay. And sure, maybe there are some circumstances where, there are cases where somebody does have something very severe and they do need something to regulate. But these days it feels like so many parents are just pumping their kids full of all kinds of things. And yeah, so I think when we see this rise of mass shootings happening, the one thing that needs to be asked, which of course we're not ever allowed to ask, there's HIPAA violations with it. It's also, how dare you, demonize people who might have mental illness or who might be suffering from depression or whatever it might be. But that's not what's going on. What's going on is we just want to know, did you pump them full of drugs? And did these drugs have some sort of an effect on them that made them go crazy, that made them have these really bizarre thoughts from the time they're in the 7th grade. I mean, this guy said, since I was in the 7th grade, I've been fantasizing about death and destruction. Well, what kind of drug was he on in the 7th grade? I mean, can we ask that question and get an answer? And if we're seeing a disproportionate number of trans school shooters, and this is what we're seeing in the news now, it's the trans. No, trans kids, for whatever reason, whether they're trans because they're genuinely trans or whether they're, and that is, there is a genuine mental disruption, a mental illness of very, very rare. I don't think it's to the level, at least I don't think it's to the level. It's coming out a lot. It's like all these kids think they're trans. And so it's like, look, okay, this does exist. This mental illness does exist. How could it be this many of you? And so this must be a societal, cultural push. But at the same time, maybe not. There's a possibility that we have been pumping so many different things into our kids in the food, the hormones alone in the food, that could be changing the kids' brain chemistry. We already know that the kids have extremely low testosterone levels for the young kids. We're seeing these hormonal changes in the younger generations. And those are the kids that are not on any sort of psychosomatic drugs. And they're not the kids that think they're trans. They're just normal kids. And they're sitting there still with low rates, low, when they're testing them, low hormones, low, all kinds of things that are biologically different than their previous generations. Well, it could be because we put hormones in everything. I mean, our chickens are so fat they can't even walk. We pump them full of all kinds of hormones. The cows are huge. The milk, I mean, kids are drinking the milk. And the milk is full of hormones, eggs, everything's got hormones, let alone the pesticides, let alone the vaccine schedule for kids. I mean, let alone all of the different microwaves. Cell phones. When I was a kid growing up, we didn't have cell phones that we were sleeping right next to on our pillows or holding it up to our brains. So yeah, maybe there is something going on that is harming the proper development of a young person's brain. And then on top of it, we say, well, then there's, rather than actually thinking maybe society and the government has allowed our kids to be poisoned with all kinds of microwaves and hormones, rather than thinking there might be something, and being pumped full of, all kinds of injections from the time they're born. Instead of looking at any of that, we say, oh, something's wrong with my kid. Pump them full of more drugs. And oh, now they think they're a different gender. Pump them full of more drugs. So when you're pumping these kids full of drugs, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, not good things. That's for sure. Not good things. So for one to blame this, I'm seeing some groups blaming it on trans. And I don't think this is a function of, trans people are just violent and they're out there trying to kill kids in schools. It's that we're pumping people full of drugs. And this is the side effect of doing that to people. Mental, biological, pharmaceutical experimentation. What do you think is going to happen to them? But so obviously, I think we need to be looking way more into that, way more into all that. I do also think there could be, and this is one of those age-old discussions since the beginning of time, since the first school shooting that we really paid attention to at Columbine. Since then, the discussion has been around violent video games, and a lot of people have dismissed it. I don't think we should really dismiss it totally. I mean, I think if you are, again, sticking a child in front of these video games, you're pumping them full of hormones, you're pumping them full of drugs, and then you stick them in front of a TV where they're playing virtual shooter, and they're fantasizing about that. And, what do you, none of that can be good. And now I'm not saying we ban any of it. I'm not into banning things, but I'm saying, as a society, we should probably have a discussion about that. Is that something we really should be showing our children? Is that something that is healthy for them? Do you sit your 5-year-old in front of horror films just by chance? I'm just wondering. Do you sit them down and have them watch all kinds of different horror films and then send them off to bed? No, you don't, because it screws up their brain. It's going to mess them up, so you don't do that. But parents don't really stop to think about the shoot 'em up games and, these other violent video games. And so maybe, and I'm not sitting here trying to blame it on the video games, but, when you screw up a brain and you stick them in front of visual stimulation all the time, what do you think is going to happen to them? So that's what I think we should be looking at. But of course, that's not what's going on. These discussions are happening, but really what's happening, the thing we have to pay attention to, really we should be focusing on that discussion. What are we pumping into our kids? Emotionally, mentally, chemically, right? All of these things. What are we doing to our kids? But then instead, what the government is doing is saying, oh, well, we're just going to have to start surveilling all of you. We're just going to have to start looking at through all of your search histories, phrases you might be using. Oh, you use Free Palestine? Well, you know what? The shooter used that. And so now I've got to flag you and watch you and put you on a watch list. This is like 9/11 all over again. And then, oh, you said you don't like Israel? You're flagged. Oh, you don't like the government. You don't like the president of the United States? You're flagged. You don't like Trump? Flagged. Trump's not going to be president forever. When Democrats get a hold of these tools, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be using them for their narrative. Today, it's going to be used by the Republicans in their narrative. Oh, well, you were too friendly. You fantasized about Russia. You fantasized about Palestine. You fantasized about Nazis. You know, he even said at one point in his manifesto something about Nazis. So they're going to say, oh, or Hitler. Oh, if you even praise Hitler, what are they calling? What do they think praising Hitler is? They're going to say, if you even just say something like Nazi Germany under Hitler had an extremely fast economic turnaround, that it was one of the most, if not the most impressive economic turnaround in world history. You're praising Nazis. You're flagged. There you go. You're on a terrorist watch list. So get ready to be put on a terrorist watch list for saying pretty much anything and everything, because they crafted this shooter to be anything and everything they, in this current administration, the powers that be, in this, more right-wing neocon kind of wet dream, they got everything they wanted in this guy. And then the next administration will use the tools. They don't even need a shooter because the tools will be there. Gideon will be out there spying on all of us. And the next administration just has to tweak it a little bit, but one thing won't change. You can't be anti-Israel, because if you are, you're going to get flagged. You're going to be put on a watch list, and who knows what they're going to do with all of that. So this just looks a little bit too perfect. And it's a little bit too much information for my liking. For me, we've been begging for, where are the Epstein files? We've been begging for any information. The Las Vegas shooter, how much information do you have on that? Not this much. And this came out within moments. And it's been years since the Las Vegas shooting. We can't get any information. Are you kidding me? The only other time I could think of that we were given this much quick access was that New Orleans, the guy that they claimed had a ISIS flag, right? You saw the truck driving down the road. The video showed a pole in the back, but maybe like a flag, or it looked like a jacket actually hanging from the pole. But then suddenly, moments later, we get a big ISIS flag laid out on the ground, right? And we also get a reporter going into his apartment, looking around his apartment just within a day, right? Looking around, saying, oh, look at the Quran. The Quran is all over the place. It's the Quran. And it was like, are you kidding me? When have we ever gotten access to a shooter's home like this within moments? And just so happens there's the Quran all over the place and a prayer rug. And then it just so happens that what looked like a jacket flying on the back of a pole is suddenly spread out and it's an ISIS flag. Like, give me a break. The guy that ran his car into a group of people. So that's the only time I could think of that we had this kind of quick information, and it was for an agenda. And now we're getting all of this quick information for another agenda. And that agenda is to spy on all of us. That agenda is to ensure that we maintain the narrative line, that we don't deviate from what they don't want us to deviate from, that we don't speak up against Israel, that we don't talk bad about Trump, that we don't talk, that here's all these things that we're not allowed to do now. And we can't be, you're a little bit too pro-Russia. You learned, that alone is so strange. How did this kid learn this grade of Russian to be able to write an entire journal in it? Something just smells off on this whole thing. Keep your eyes open, everybody. Do not go into anything blind. Always think about what is the ulterior motive. Why are they giving us this information? That is the one question we should always be asking every single time. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.